Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. This week, we have a conversation with Peter Joeckel, founder of Turn On Dynamics, a firm that serves both Dynamics GP and AX, and now 365 for operations clients. Peter writes about the ERP landscape and Microsoft's role in particular on his company blog. And when he's not writing, he's focused on client work, especially in the manufacturing and distribution space. Peter's experience with ERP goes back past the introduction of the Dynamics products in the US. So this conversation was a great chance to get a long-term perspective on how partners and customers might want to look at today's software landscape and what it really does for users. Peter, thanks for joining us today. Could you start by giving us a little sense of your background in the enterprise software space and how you arrived where you are today?
Sure. I think I've got probably one of the few educational backgrounds that actually fits what I do in the business. I have an engineering degree, and I took that engineering degree and went to Price Waterhouse and worked in their tier 1 manufacturing implementation teams. I learned everything kind of about the software industry, in the tier 1 space from Price Waterhouse. And while I was working there, I got one of the first PCs on my desk, and I ordered a copy of Macola software from the back of a magazine and installed it on the PC. And I came up with the thought to the partners that maybe we should start a practice where we try to go and install, the same way that we installed in, big companies with the tier 1 stuff. We went to the kind of mid-market with this new software that was out. And they thought it was a really great idea. And on the second meeting, they told me that if this worked out, that they were going to have to put a partner in charge. And I was highly offended by that. And being young and not having, any responsibilities, I said, well, why would I want to have somebody in charge of it when it was my idea? And they said, well, that's because you're just a junior associate. And my response was, well, maybe I should go do this myself. And they thought, well, when are you going to do that? And my answer was this afternoon. And I was in business. And so that was back in 86. And so I've been doing, Computer Associates, Macola, SysPro, Sage, Oracle, the Great Plains, AX, everything that you could imagine, with a big focus towards distribution and manufacturing.
That story of what brought you out on your own is unique, but when you talk to Microsoft partners that have been working in the dynamic space, I'd say many others have had to make a similar decision early on to break away and maybe have an independent career as opposed to being an employee for someone else.
Yeah, pretty typical story, but more from a CPA background.
Now, that certainly seems to suit the GP space, but you work with other products too. You've seen GP evolve since before the Microsoft acquisition, right?
Yes. Was heavily into the GP when, that was purchased. And at the time, I actually, I would say made the majority of my living in the GP world. And one of my friends from the Macola days called me up and told me about this fantastic, new product that he was looking at called AX. And I was, having known him for a long time, I was kind of excited about what he had to tell me. And then when I asked about how many installs there were in the United States, he said 0. And then I asked him where the product was from, and he said, it's over out of Denmark. And I thought, okay, well, why don't you call me back when there's an install base in the U.S.? And I guess it was maybe a year or so later, he called me back, and when the afternoon that Microsoft announced the acquisition and folded the GP business into his AX business, and off we went. So had a practice that did both the GP and the AX for a while.
And how have the AX and GP practices moved forward together? Have they followed separate tracks, or have you seen any cross-pollination between them?
Well, I think all thoughts of quote-unquote, cross-pollination kind of ended when, you remember the big project where Microsoft was going to take all of their, all their products and build one code base. Do you remember that? And the interesting thing was at that point is if you had friends at Microsoft, there was never one programmer or one system analyst assigned to that. it was all one big, theory. I think that Great Plains probably, you could make a case that was the best success stories for a mid-market ERP package in the history of mid-market ERP, right? And I definitely think you could say that the channel that supported it and continues to support it today may be, without a doubt, the greatest channel that was, the most committed, biggest, best, channel that ever existed. But I also think that, after the greatest, sales job ever is when Great Plains got sold to Microsoft, because I think that, even by that time, if you don't think about what's going on under the hood being, dexterity, I think once the technical folks at Microsoft that were, sitting there looking into the future, looked under the hood, I have this image that they woke up and said, we bought what? And, pretty soon after, you get the AX Nav acquisition. And, from then on in, there's a lot of, I don't know if it's intentional or, probably unintentional, slights to the GP channel and to the product line, because, I think Microsoft was so focused for so long on building up the AX product that you had all these different events that, if you're a GP guy, you were like, oh my God, what are they trying to do to us, right? They dropped the price, they changed some of the localizations, they lumped all the products into the SMB line, and AX was for bigger companies. So there's a lot of things that the GP channel has undergone, while I think Microsoft focused on the AX product specifically. It was actually kind of a shock when the Dynamics 365, the smaller version of it was based on Nav. It's kind of interesting, when you listen to some of the guys that are Nav guys, I think secretly the Nav guys still think that they're going to make a big comeback and be the product, right? If you talk to those guys, when AX was getting all the resources and all the love, a lot of that development got kind of dispersed and spread out. And so it's become more of an unwieldy, product. Whereas I think the Nav team is pretty much focused and stayed together, in one location, and they're probably bent on, being back on and being the top dog. So it'll be interesting how that all shakes out in the future.
Yeah, I would say development and allocation of resources for Dynamics ERPs has always been a little mysterious. It's always at any point in time. I think back to the Project Madeira announcement, and I remember it was a little hard to tell what they were referring to in terms of a spin-off versus a new version of the product. I recall it took me a little time to make sure I understood that particular announcement.
Yeah, I got a lot of friends that are, GP hosters. I just think, oh my gosh, what are you thinking now as far as where's your business going to go in the future, right?
So there have been some tough conversations about that topic. What do you think about the GP partners and the work they've done to make GP as much of a SaaS offering as they could? I'm speaking of your hosting partners.
Yeah, I had a really good technical person help out one of the first efforts to launch GP as kind of a software as a service offering many years ago. And I've got several friends that host GP, and at its core, it's not architected to be multi-tenant. It's not architected to be easy to host, right? And so the real issues have come in when price competitiveness became an issue, right? And so the amount of effort has been absolutely stunning to work that business model. And to me, they've done an amazing job, right? Building entire business offerings and marketing solutions that are kind of solutions out of the box based on the GP. So those guys have all done incredible work, and I just wonder, the thing to me is always take a look at what the competition is saying about your products to give you an idea of, where you might have made a misstep, right? If I'm somebody selling, NetSuite or Accumatica or anything else, I'm going to kill the GP guys, right? The GP guys used to get killed by NetSuite by just out and out blatant lies. Now the NetSuite guys and all those folks, they don't even have to lie anymore. They just have to tell the truth about, well, when Microsoft came out with their, latest release of their, software as a service offering, what was it based on? Well, it wasn't GP. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really that's a difficult row for the hosters.
Yeah, for sure. It does seem like several firms have put in serious work. Well, I had some conversations a while back with a few of the firms that do offer, specifically Azure, GP on Azure, which was, I think, architecturally not easy to do, but has been now shown to be done. I think there are also some limitations when you go that route that maybe some companies that are good candidates for GP didn't want to make. That was one of the observations I had. And so if they opt for a hosted option, which I'm guessing a lot do these days, they're going to go for private hosting just to get added flexibility.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. You know what? I think the install base on GP is going to keep that product around forever, right?
Yeah. You said earlier, and I've heard from others, it's going to continue to be the right fit for some companies.
Yeah, it's a great fit. It's a great product. The thing I always wonder is whenever you go to any kind of Great Plains event, take a look at the demographics of the folks, supporting it. I think all those guys are going to retire before before the product dies out, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I don't see any reason to think that the product goes away anytime soon. I think I think over 5 years, there's a good chance it could lose velocity and even further than it has in terms of its roadmap. It's a pretty slowly moving roadmap at this point. I don't know what the next big thing would be for GP. It reminds me of, other sort of older mid-market ERPs that have a very strong set of features that can work for companies. But, it comes down to price. It comes down to the sort of knowledge and expertise and sort of salesmanship of the people putting it up for consideration with a prospect.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I always thought was funny was the GP folks and Microsoft, when they first got together, was like the worst confluence of bad selling in the history of the world, because most of the GP guys were, accountants, former accountant types that hated to sell. And so selling was a necessary evil. And so they didn't do it particularly well because they didn't like it. And, when Microsoft acquired it, Microsoft knew nothing about ERP. And, most of Microsoft is an order taking organization, right? How many thousand Excels would you like next quarter? Right.
Right. Yep.
Not selling, just taking orders. And so at the time you take the confluence of those two, you have two organizations that, weren't particularly adept at selling ERP. And that's where I think, NetSuite made a killing for a while. And then, right, all the dissatisfaction in the partner channel got all the if you think about the Accumatica guys, what's the Accumatica folks pitch to the GP partner channel? We feel your pain. We remember the good old days when everybody loved you at Great Plains, and it was this great community, and you were treated correctly by the software vendor. Come play with us. We're going to do the same thing over. It's genius, right?
Yeah, no, here's a question. Have you seen that pitch? I know plenty of partners who sell GP and even sell NAV have dipped their toe in with Accumatica, with NetSuite, with Intact. Do you know of many that have really converted over and become really dedicated to those other solutions?
I think everybody that I know has talked about dabbling there, right? To me, it's a joke because in order to pick up a product that moves you, sideways, the time and the effort's not there, right?
Right.
And to me, if you're going to reduce the price of GP, and you're going to go over to Accumatica and, products like that where there's downward pressure on the implementation side, what kind of future does that build for an organization? Which is why I got more into maintenance mode on the GP side for the customer base instead of trying to sell new deals, and moved, all the new stuff over into the AX side. But I will tell you where I think there is an absolutely fabulous untapped market in the GP world.
All right.
And where that is there's a huge installed base of GP, right?
Yes. And
very naturally, some of those organizations outgrow the product. And they outgrow the product for, very good reasons, right? The functionality isn't there. They're going international. They're doing some types of things that GP is just not there, right? They're bursting at the seams, whatever it is. We've taken a small handful of those guys and moved them up to AX.
Mm-hmm.
And what's fascinating there is that none of those were sales projects. They were just natural. Hey, you guys are bursting at the seams here. Guess what? Within the Microsoft family, you have a product that can handle all of your issues. And guess what? You get a credit for the money you spent on your GP software against that AX licensing. And we literally have AX implementations where with the credit that these folks got on their GP side, literally offset the AX software.
Wow.
Because back in the day, GP cost a lot more, right?
Right.
And here's the interesting thing is a lot of the GP partners, it's very difficult to step up to an AX product, right? It's a completely different technology, different functional set, different mindset,
sure.
Different customer base. Everything is different about it. So a lot of the GP partners, it's not going to be an easy transition, to take customers from GP to AX. And all the big AX partners, for them, the amount of money that it can charge on those deals are too small. So there's this just wonderful market in the mid spot there where, you can take customers where their natural upgrade, their next upgrade shouldn't be to the next version of GP, but should be from GP to AX.
That's interesting. How has that been going? Is that something that's accelerated in the last year or two, or has that just been something you've done over time?
So I thought that was a business model, and it got sidetracked with some other shiny objects. So I kind of put that on hold, and it's just been more of a business model of opportunity. But I think it is a business model that you can pursue, especially if you think about where's a lot of the channel going, right? A lot of the smaller partners, they kind of huddle together in these master VAR programs, which I call the, huddling together of the weak and the fearful, right?
Okay.
I understand why Microsoft doesn't want to deal with a million organizations. And so I understand why they want to push that business model. But, from the small lifestyle partners, one or two guys or, 3-4 guys, whatever, that have that, that install base they've been working forever. I think they get sold a bill of goods on going to the, to those partnerships because, it's always going to be here's the fees and here's all this marketing we're going to do and everything's going to be wonderful. And I think at the end of the day, the marketing probably doesn't exist and it's really there for, keeping margins, at an acceptable level. So a lot of those guys, they're sitting on top of the odd customer here and there that they're going to lose because those customers, unbeknownst to them, are out looking for their next, their next software solution because they have figured out that they've outgrown it. And they know their GP guy can't help them, right? And the GP guy doesn't want to bring in, the AX partner because of the horror stories about getting frozen out of deals. And so it's kind of a market space where I kind of tried to go out and, talk to some of these partners about taking these deals and moving over. But the sales job to the partners is 10 times as hard as selling the deal to the customer to whom it makes complete logical sense. So it's kind of an odd thing.
Well, I'm definitely in agreement with you. I think that the GP to Dynamics 365 operations path is one that will become more common and perhaps a little somewhat more supported. I don't know if that means in terms of migration tools or just competencies, but I got some of a sense that even Microsoft's thinking about that they can see a logical case for that kind of migration path for GP customers in the future. And it doesn't seem like there'll be all that much. If I guess what I'm trying to say is if they added a few elements that could maybe grease the skids on making that case, that they could start to see some movement in that over time. Because my other theory was that the GP to NAV or GP to 365 financials might become more appealing if more GP features get built into 365 financial or NAV, as sort of R&D resources get moved over from GP to those other products. I think either of those is certainly possible, but it was interesting to hear some hints that the GP to AX or GP to operations really might be a long-term path that Microsoft starts asking partners to support or asks customers to consider.
Yeah.
The other element of that may be interesting is if Microsoft really just starts pressuring. I think I've talked about this on maybe another podcast I did a while back, but if Microsoft just starts pressuring the customers themselves to look at one of the 365 products. So if they know that their GP customers are right. They if the GP partners, maybe to your point, not willing to talk about AX or 365 solutions, that Microsoft starts sort of putting it out there for them, so they start asking the questions and looking for a partner who can answer them for them if the GP VAR is not the one.
Listen, as far as I'm concerned, and all of the ERP products, it is all going to boil down to very simply to one point: follow the money, right?
Yeah.
They have made the commitment to turn themselves, from a company that makes all their money selling the latest release of Windows, right, to being a cloud company, right? And how do you make money being a cloud company? Well, you have, customers that give you the credit card, and every month it's ka-ching, ka-ching. It's just like that gym membership, right? And to me, the best customer in a gym is the guy that at the end of the year, looks at after everything that he's eaten after the holidays and says, "Oh my God, I got to join the gym." Signs up for a year, right?
Yep.
Goes 3 weeks, never shows up again. And then sometime in July figures out, "Oh my God, I'm still paying on a monthly basis." Calls up the gym and they tell him, "Well, you can't cancel over the phone. You've got to come here and cancel." And then they forget about driving to the gym for another 4 months. And by the time they finally, it's that same kind of business model. Microsoft wants people on the cloud paying on a monthly basis, right? So anything and everything that, moves customers to that business model is what they're going to focus on. Everything else to me is a distraction for them. The GP install base and the GP market and all that good stuff, I doubt it registers, right? Be nice to have, but in the grand scheme of things, if there's a way to market to those folks and have a nice way to move over. And there's never going to be this nice, a technical, tool set that moves things from GP, onto their, Dynamics. None of that ever happened. None of that stuff ever works. It's always a re-implementation, right?
Right.
All of that stuff always works great in marketing materials, but it never happens. It'll be a re-implementation. So what it'll be some financial incentive to move people over.
Interesting. Well, I wanted to change topics a little bit, but related, and comes to architecting ERP solutions, which I think is something you think about quite a lot, obviously, and where companies are thinking about it today. Like you said, cloud is something that partners are eager to talk about. Obviously, it's a big part of Microsoft's future strategy, and they make that case for choosing the cloud over an on-premise solution. Is that becoming a challenge when you're actually trying to, present a recommended design or recommended architecture to a client these days, whether it's something for GP or whether it's something for Dynamics 365? Has it changed?
Let me answer your question with a big, long-winded answer. Is that fair?
That is fair.
So to me, when accounting systems, when you had to pick up a mouse for accounting systems, everything's been downhill from then. Because for the poor guy that has to sit there and enter tons and tons of vouchers or whatever, all of that stuff has just been a productivity drag, right? And as all of this technology has gotten more and more, complex while being touted as being simpler and simpler, the effort to install, maintain, upgrade, et cetera, has all become incredibly more difficult, right? The browser may be the absolute worst possible interface for an accounting system in the history of the world. It's like, how is this efficient? Now, you take that back and you take a look at, where we are, today, and you're going out and, selling new systems. I think that the best customer for Microsoft is a small company that chooses, the accounting version of the cloud product, of the 365 product, instead of QuickBooks, because those guys are all cookie cutter, and there's not going to be any issues as far as customizations, interfaces with legacy systems, all these other things. So it would be better for Microsoft to have 1 million one-user accounting systems, right, than have a 1 million user enterprise system. Because the enterprise systems, where they're coming from in the legacy world, those are unbelievably complex and messy systems. A lot of these folks have these, integrations with legacy systems and all of these different, types of operating systems, all these things that have to work together. When you try migrating that stuff into the cloud, what ends up happening, it's an endless support nightmare. So every day, right? If you have an issue with one of those big enterprise customers, what happens? How many alarm bells go off at Microsoft? The SQL team, the Windows team, the security team, the ERP team, all of that stuff gets dinged. So to me, it's almost, that's a hard business to be in, taking the big ERP systems into the cloud. And people have become more savvy, right? Looking at, their Oracle and SAP implementations and how they get, once they move them onto those platforms, how they can never move off. And they just have to pay, an ever increasing, set of maintenance fees. So I don't know if everybody's going to magically jump into the cloud, right? I think that the thing that people always focus on is how many people are moving to the cloud. But on the opposite end is there's always that bigger number that's not moving into it. And so I wonder if at some point there isn't that, there isn't that thing where things kind of level off and X number of people like the simplicity and the ease of the cloud, and other folks just want to keep things, on premise. And I think there's a huge opportunity for somebody to come out with an old school ERP system that has, the old simple and easy to use screens, and where things are very fast and very efficient. And the only reason you need to go to a browser or to use a mouse is, where it makes sense, like a, reporting and graphs and that kind of stuff. So that, like I said, that was a rather lengthy answer to a simple question.
Well, I think Microsoft got a taste of the discontent in their own customer base when AX, when the AX customer base found out that there originally wasn't a plan for an on-premise option.
Right.
And maybe you heard this with your own clients, but there was
sure.
Huge backlash, and they came around pretty fast. Still, I think some people still wonder why it took as long as it did. But they did come around, and that certainly seems to have made a lot of people happy.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I wrote an article about this on. Have you ever played any games on Xbox?
No, not Xbox.
Okay, I'm not a gamer, right? I got one of these Xbox. I got an Xbox for a kid, and over the holidays, and they said, "Hey, come and look at this." And I looked at this stuff, and I thought, "Oh my God, this is unbelievable, right? This is incredible what we have here, right?" And then I thought about, what we get, not just with Microsoft, but in the ERP world, what we get release after release after release of, easier to use, more rich, blah, blah, blah software. And it's anything but. And then I thought to myself, you know what? The people that design and develop this game software are the guys that play it. They love this stuff. They're designing it for themselves. They're making the best possible product because they're going to step away from their PC developing it, and they're going to stand back and they're going to pick up the joystick and they're going to go, oh, I made this better for myself, right? How many developers are out there in the ERP world that are sitting there designing it for themselves? They're not.
Right.
You know, most of these guys that have to develop ERP packages should have to go out and enter stacks and stacks of, you know, of accounts receivable vouchers and reversing journal entries for a month, you know, in the system that they just designed. And then they would scurry back to their cubicles and design would be completely different.
You're probably right. ERP selection work. That was another one I wanted to kind of get your sense on. You know, you support more than one ERP. What does the selection process look like these days?
Boy, this is one of my favorite topics. If you go out and Google successful ERP implementation, right, you will find, you know, hundreds and thousands of articles and experts telling you exactly and specifically how to select and implement ERP software, right? And at the same time, if you Google ERP failure, the failure rates and the sizes of the failures just keep on getting bigger and bigger. And to me, what it is, it's the fundamental issue that how people, you know, identify what software they want to look at has changed dramatically. But how we go about the selection process hasn't changed at all. It's still the same, you know, demo process, requirements documents, right? Mm-hmm. And my theory is that every massive ERP implementation failure has had a successful demo. But yet we keep selecting this stuff absolutely the same way. You know, we come up with a requirements definition document. We send out a scripted demo, you know, and narrow the field down to 10 folks that come in and do scripted demos for us, right? It's that same process over and over and over. None of that stuff has changed. And it leads to absolutely horrific bad results because it's bad behavior on both ends. You know, I think once somebody decides they're going to pick up a new, ERP package, that starts this mutual dance of deception with providers. Everybody knows they're BSing each other, right? But it's like everybody knows, but it just keeps going on the same way over and over because nobody has figured out a better and different way to do it. And I've thought about this a lot, and I think there are different ways and better ways to do it. And one of the things that, you know, I think that we need to do as an industry is we need to select software better and differently, and we need to implement it better and differently. So to me, your question is selection process, same old stuff. The thing that's changed is how people find who they want to talk to. It used to be, you know, we would go out and market to folks. Now people want to kind of do their own marketing, you know, on the internet. You know, they want to do their own searches and then reach out and, you know, find somebody to talk to. So that's changed. But once they've identified what they want to look at, oh my God, same old nightmare over and over again.
You know, I had hopes that at least with AX, that Lifecycle Services would give AX partners something better to stand on than what they had in the past. Are you not finding that for pre-sales?
No. You cannot take anything that any that any software organization has ever tried to help in the sales process. I've never seen it. I will tell you this, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't want to create this stuff all by yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Then those tools are invaluable, right?
Yeah, you know, it's honestly an area that I, at least with MS Dynamics World, we sort of are able to just naturally avoid because we're really focused on this one set of products. So it's sort of for people who are already looking at it. So it's a headache area that I tend to not be a part of a lot of the time. But But it's interesting to hear your view on it, that it really hasn't changed.
You know, to me is at this point, I can go out to a company and, you know, within 15 minutes, I can tell you what their problems are, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't need, And the analogy I always use is if you go trackside with a NASCAR crew chief, right? And all these cars are whizzing by you, and he asks you, hey, how are these guys going? Your answer is probably, wow, they're all going really fast and good, right? And to the NASCAR chief who's been doing this for 20 years, the cars are coming by and he's telling you, well, that one over there, the right rear, suspension setup is off a little bit. This next car over here is running a little rich on air. And this guy over here has an issue with a left front tire. Stuff that you would never know unless you were out there for that, 10,000 hours that, Malcolm Gladwell talks about. And that specific knowledge is so difficult to gain because you have to have so many years into it. You have to have so many years into it. And then you also have to have, an affinity and a knack for it. That trying to productize that stuff, right, is like trying to take a doctor, taking a doctor and replacing him with WebMD. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it's that same kind of thing. Yes, it can be helpful, but it never replaces that guy that's done thousands of surgeries or, watched thousands of cars come by and know exactly what the issue is. So it's just one of those things where you can't just, put it all in spreadsheets and Word documents and expect magic.
So is there anything looking forward in maybe in your own work and your own projects that you have slated coming up? Anything else in particular that you're planning to be spending a lot of time really focusing on or maybe looking forward to?
Yeah, we're going to try to ride this Dynamics, this D365 wave, because one thing Microsoft does fabulously well is, they have a ton of resources to be able to support their products. They've always done that exceptionally well, right? And the other thing is, with this push that they have right now for wanting people that live in the cloud, their cloud-based ERP projects are going to get a lot of love and a lot of marketing push. And so my friends and I are trying to move from being project-based to product-based. And so we're developing verticals that sit in the, the Dynamics 365 space. That's our big push.
Excellent. Well, Peter, I look forward to seeing where you take things from here. And thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
You're welcome. And quite frankly, my alternate marketing plan is buying lottery tickets. And I hope that one hits first.
Oh, goodness. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Enjoy talking to you, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. This has been another episode of the MSDW Podcast. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to share your feedback or have an idea for a future episode, send me an email. You can reach me at jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is msdynamicsworld.com signing off.